can start. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man sara ala sabilihi ila yawmiddin, amma ba'd. So in continue discussing the book Al-Mulakis al-Fiqhi by Shaykh Salih Al-Fawzan, Hafidallah, Tabarak Ta'ala. And we are covering the chapter of Kitab Al-Hajj. And we're discussing specifically concerning Bab fi Mawaqit Al-Hajj. So in the last lesson that we discussed concerning matter that he discussed concerning that we had ended it regarding Istidad al-Hajj, regarding a person preparing oneself for Hajj. So certain things as a preparation, and also Fadl al-Hajj, and also some of the virtues of Hajj, and things that were covered before this. So we'll be now continuing by discussing concerning what is mentioned here regarding Mawaqit al-Hajj, which are the different stations of Hajj.
Bismillahi wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. Al-Mu'allif hafidahullah, chapter 4, page number 417. Miqat of Hajj. There are certain times for Hajj and certain sites for entering the state of Ihram. The fixed times of Hajj. The times specified for Hajj are mentioned by Allah, exalted be He, when He says, Hajj is during well-known months. So whoever has made Hajj obligatory upon himself therein by entering the state of Ihram, there is to be for him no sexual relations and no disobedience and no disputing during Hajj. Surah Baqarah, ayat 197. These months are Shawwal and Dhul-Qa'dah, and the first 10 days of Dhul-Hijjah. Therefore, anyone who enters the state of Ihram in these months with the intention to perform Hajj must avoid offensive words and deeds which contradict the purity of that act of worship, and should also be preoccupied with good deeds and abide by piety.
So the author, Hafidallah, discussed concerning this particular aspect concerning of those things that relates to the ahkam of Hajj regarding al-Mawaqit. So regarding concerning al-Mawaqit, which concerning the Miqat. So Mawaqit is the plural of Miqat, which is to identify those locations and places where the person then will enter into al-Hajj. So Hajj or Umrah, that there are certain points where the person will commence or enter into the state of Hajj and Umrah, and when from there commit to certain acts, and also to commit to certain rules and regulation. So everything starts at this Miqat. Aywa.
Sites for entering the state of Ihram. They are the specific places which a pilgrim must not exceed and head for Mecca without entering the state of Ihram, a state of ritual consecration during Hajj or Umrah, declaring his intention to perform Hajj. These places were pointed out by the Prophet ﷺ in the narration of Abdullah ibn Abbas, who said, Allah's Messenger ﷺ specified Dhul Hulayfa as a site for Ihram for the people of Medina, Al-Juhfa for the people of Ash-Sham, Qurunul Manazil for the people of Najd, and Yalamlam for the people of Yemen, saying they are sites for Ihram for those people and for any other people coming through them, i.e. those sites, with the intention of performing Hajj and Umrah, lesser pilgrimage. And whoever is living within these boundaries can assume Ihram from the place he starts from, and the people of Mecca can assume Ihram from Mecca. Moreover, Imam Muslim related on the authority of Jabir that the Prophet ﷺ said, the muhal of the people of Iraq is that to Iraq.
Iraq. Aywa. So regarding concern what you mentioned here is regarding concerning of Mawaqit or the Miqat regarding Hajj or Umrah, that there's two things to factor in. So regarding concerning this Miqat, they have two types that he mentioned here. The first regarding concerning the Zamaniya, the time that one is allowed regarding Al-Hajj and Umrah. So regarding concerning Al-Zamaniya, the timing regarding concerning that for Hajj, that it have set months. So Hajj, regarding when a person can start preparing himself and to perform Hajj, it has set months. And as for those months that are dedicated or set for Hajj, as mentioned, Al-Hajju Ashhurun Ma'lumat. So regarding concerning that, to know that they are set months regarding concerning Al-Hajj. So as for those set months that I mentioned, one, Shawwal, that's the month that, so Shawwal after Ramadan, so which is Shawwal. Also the second, Dhul Qa'dah is the second, and then the first 10 days of the month of Dhul Hijjah. So the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. So these are the days concerning Al-Hajj. And the main days for Hajj is in concerning the month of Dhul Hijjah. But as for the preceding months, they are more so for the person who is performing Umrah and Hajj together. So those are concerning that those time that are set regarding concerning Al-Hajj. As for Umrah, that a time for Umrah it is open. So there's no for Umrah, then a person can perform Umrah at any time. As for Hajj, then it is within certain set time period. Then he mentioned second regarding of those Miqat, that is concerning, which is the one that will be discussed further and more in detail regarding Mawaqid al-Makaniyya. So those Miqat that relates to particular places where the person have to assume the state of Hajj or Umrah. So this is the one that will be covered more in detail regarding those places, those stations. So he mentioned regarding concerning those stations, he mentioned 5 stations. So you have 5 points, different places where that people who wish to perform Hajj or Umrah, that you have to be in a state of Ihram before crossing those particular points. So of those one that he has mentioned some, the first hadith that is mentioned regarding that matter concerning hunna lahunna liman ata alayhinna min ghayri hayli'inna min limimman arada al-hajj wal-umrah al-hadith. So that hadith that he mentioned in Bukhari and Muslim, that kind of somewhat with the hadith here, it kind of somewhat is specialized. It mentioned 4 stations. So this particular hadith that is in Bukhari and Muslim, it mentioned 4 of those stations regarding al-hajj and umrah. And then he mentioned another hadith which is mentioned by Imam Muslim that mentioned the 5th station. So the 5th station is mentioned regarding concerning, which is for the people of Al-Iraq, mentioned min that al-Irq, that Irq. And he mentioned hadith Muslim in hadith Jabir, and that hadith of Jabir that is narrated, collected by Imam Muslim, that it state or mention regarding that for the people of Iraq and the likes, that their station is that Irq. And for that particular narration that is in the Muslim, that particular hadith, that it is narrated by several companions. So you find about 5 companions who mention regarding that the Miqat station for the people of Iraq, which is that Iraq, that you have 5 companions narrate the hadith, including concerning Jabir. Also you find amongst the other, we have Al-Harith ibn Amr, Abdullah ibn Amr, ibn Umar, Anas, Aisha, and also Jabir. But all these hadith, they are somewhat questioned or concerned. There's a discussion regarding the authenticity of these hadith going back to the Prophet ﷺ. So you have a discussion regarding for the station, the 5th station, that Iraq, is it something that the Prophet ﷺ actually designated as being the station or for the people of that location. Yeah, for the ulama who mentioned this hadith, because some of the hadith is said to be, it is not marfu' authentically, but what is more correct, that is go back, it is an author upon the Sahaba. So it's more concerned and mentioned concerning Umar bin Khattab is the one who kind of somewhat mentioned this and agreed upon by the Sahaba, as mentioned by Ibn Abdul Barr. So you have that discussion regarding the 5th station being for the people of Iraq. It is something that was been that station had been mentioned or being designated by the Prophet ﷺ or identified by the Prophet ﷺ or by the Sahaba. So you have that discussion, but they mention that the ahadith regarding this, it is questionable regarding concerning its authenticity, as the hadith mentioned by Jabir, one of the narrators is somewhat in doubt. So his doubt regarding that is the hadith going back to the Prophet ﷺ. So based upon this, the ulama of hadith have mentioned, if the narrator is in doubt, then in regarding concerning matters of hadith of doubt, then that's unacceptable. So the person have to be kind of, so if the person of doubt regarding the hadith, then this is somewhat is a sign of weakness and also a reason to disqualify or to reject the hadith because the narrator is in doubt. So things regarding the Prophet Islam cannot be mentioned in doubt. The person has to be certain as to what is being transmitted or being related. So the hadith is somewhat on the question. The hadith is on the question, and most of the hadith, the best of them is the one of Jabir. The other ones concerning there's a lot of weakness in the isnad, in the asanid of all others. Then there's a lot of discussion regarding the narrators not being aided regarding the narrators. So that's concerning that matter. Where the author, rahimahullah, Hafidullah, have mentioned those stations. But as mentioned that, as we mentioned, that there's an ijma regarding this fifth one. But even though there's an ijma that can somewhat prove that it is something to be observed. Aywa.
The idea behind setting such miqats for Hajj is as follows. The house of Allah, the Kaaba, being so glorified and honored by Allah, it is fortified by Allah through Mecca and protected by the sanctuary of Mecca, which in turn is glorified by those miqats beyond which no one cannot pass without being in the state of ihram, as a sign of honor and glorification to the house of Allah.
And so those miqat, the main concerns of the miqat would be, for example, that this is the Kaaba, this is Mecca, this object is Mecca. So those stations are surrounded around Mecca. So if a person coming from whichever direction, you'll pass one of those miqat, and the person then have to assume the state of ihram if he intends to perform Hajj and Umrah, and not, as he mentioned here, to be discussed regarding the person, that the person is not expected that he should pass the miqat station and not in a state of ihram. Then that is violating of the ahkam of Umrah and Hajj, as to be discussed later. Aywa.
The farthest of these sites for entering ihram is Dhul Hulayfa, which is specified for the people of Medina. The distance between this place and Mecca is about a 10-day journey on camels or the like.
What's that concerned? So the Abad, the furthest away from Mecca of these station is that of Al-Medina, which is Dhul Hulayfa. That's the miqat.
As for the people of Asham, Egypt and Morocco, the site for ihram is Al-Jufa, which is near Rabbigh. This place is about a 3-night journey far from Mecca, and some say it is even further.
That's when the people from Al-Misr, from Maghrib, from that side, who coming from that side, then their miqat is Ju'afa. Aywa.
Yalamlam, which 2-night journey far from Mecca, is the site for ihram for those coming from Yemen.
So for the people from the side of Yemen, then that direction, then Yalamlam, that's their miqat.
The site for ihram, a state of ritual purity during Hajj or Umrah for the people of Najd, is Qarnul Manazil, now known as As-Sad, which is a 2-night journey far from Mecca. As regards the people,
تفضل.
As regards the people of Iraq and those of the East, the site for ihram is Datul Ilq, which is a 2-night journey far from Mecca.
So as we have mentioned regarding concerns, so these are the 5 stations that are said to be miqat, that where if the person entering or from whichever direction, then the person should be assumed the state of ihram before they have passed those stations. So they are somewhat marked and some unknown. So in cases now you find today concerned to know that most travels are done by a lot of travel is done by concerning that by way of flights. So it all depends concerning the route of that flight. So it all depends on the route of the flight that a person is entering that region. Then you would assume that miqat depending on the flight plan or the flight journey. So that's concerning, but a person to ensure that if especially concerning in the flight by way of plane, to ensure that they assume the state of ihram before they pass that site. And as we have mentioned, or of the things to observe, that one of the Shaykh of contemporary times, or Shaykh Sa'd Khatlan, one of the Shaykh that he mentioned regarding of a point that he mentioned, that especially concerning people who are traveling by way of plane, that you'll find in most part that on the plane they'll mention that they'll give those like Muslim flight companies that they'll tell you when you're approaching the miqat, But at the time that they will tell you, for example, they will tell you that we're approaching in, for example, half an hour. But then since when we actually reach the Miqat, they said we are now over the Miqat. Or said 5 minutes will be entering the Miqat. Then next thing, then the next time they'll mention, said, we are now arriving at the Miqat. At that point of arriving, then the people start to assume ihram. In the Shaykh have mentioned of an error that sometimes occur when they say we are now over the Miqat. When they say that word, remember the plane travel very fast, huh? So the Miqat is very take about less. Is not the point to cross. Is not the amount of time is very short. Minutes, or not even minutes, seconds for a plane. So by the time they said we are going to cross the Miqat, in most part they already crossed it. So the time that they are advertising, announcing on the plane, by the time they finish their sentence, they already crossed the Miqat. And then people now start to make assume their ihram, where they already entered into the Miqat. They already passed the Miqat and enter into the cross the Miqat point. So they mentioned, so it's a better thing to be done, like if you know, for example, 5 minutes before you enter your state of ihram, 5 minutes before, even though it is disliked by the ulama to do so, but if you don't, there's a possibility you might pass it, you might do wrong by going into ihram after you have crossed the Miqat station. So it's better to take the lesser evil, which is before, even though it is disliked, than to fall into a greater evil, which is doing it after you have crossed over the Miqat. So something that he kind of somewhat, I like that you find a error occur in this. And even himself, he said, no, I've checked this myself. Like on flights, you understand, you have checked it himself and verified that, it does occur where by the time they're telling you we have reached the Miqat, you're over it, you already passed. Because the plane is traveling so fast.
So it's disliked to get into ihram. Say for instance, you're stopping in, I don't know, any regional countries, like, I don't know, Lebanon, Egypt, whatever. Sometimes they got facilities for you to change it, shower, change it to ihram.
Right.
So that's disliked.
No, so that can be done, and that's better. For example, as we'll discuss, for example, we're coming from, wherever we're coming from, for example, from England, right? We're on the plane. So for example, the plane may be, and it's a direct flight. You're going to land in Jeddah. So Jeddah is within the Miqat. Remember that. So Jeddah as a city is within the Miqat. It's not before the Miqat. So the person, so when the plane lands, you're already in the Miqat. You're already in the Miqat. You already crossed the Miqat. So the person then, for example, from England, that the person then is most likely to take his ghusl, as we're going to discuss those things, prepare himself before he even enter the plane. After taking your ghusl, maybe most likely will be from at your home. If you're entering you're stopping at another Muslim country, in the airport they may have some facilities for you to take a ghusl and the likes. So you can do it there. Now, but the person can put on the garment and all those things before entering to the plane or immediately after entering to the plane, right? Then that part there's no harm in this. The things concerning of the talbiyah, when the person make the talbiyah of concerning Allahumma labbaik, that umrah or hajj, at what point that is to be said, that's when the person will actually officially enter into ihram. So and to do it also in the plane can be a bit, the plane, the cubicles can be very tight. People go inside there, urinate all over the place. It's wet. So I wouldn't advise a person to do it inside there. So maybe the better to do concerns that in the airport, at least the person has somewhat you can put on your izar and rida and still put on something over. When you reach in the place, you just take off that top garment. You understand? But you already have everything is already ready and prepared. But the point concerned that said in the planes regarding of the Miqat station, the person do it before, it's worse to do it after than before. And the errors sometimes occur then. Aywa. So as we mentioned regarding concern the fifth, so Adi concerned the fifth Miqat, which is that concerning that Iraq, of that of Adi Iraq, that we mentioned there's some discussion regarding a hadith, regarding that matter of the ulama who take the view concerning the hadith, that is mentioned regarding that, they are not sahih marfu'an, meaning that they going back to the Prophet of Islam, but rather it's the Umar that come from Umar, and they mention an ijma was established on this. So Ibn Abdul Barr rahimahullah mentioned ajmahu ala anna ihram Iraq min that Iraq. That is an ijma. Ibn Abdul Barr rahimahullah mentioned that is an ijma and a consensus, an agreement between the ulama that the ihram for Iraq is for Iraqi, that it is that Iraq. So that's concerning. So it proved that even though there's a discussion regarding the hadith, but an ijma, which is also a proof of Islam, that also shows that, established that that Iraq also is from the Miqat, by way of, the least by way of ijma. Aywa.
These are the sites for entering ihram for the people of the aforesaid places and those passing through them with the intention of performing Hajj or Umrah. Regarding those who dwell in places that are nearer to Mecca than the aforementioned places, they assume ihram for Hajj or Umrah from their places. As mentioned above, the residents of Mecca, however, enter ihram for Hajj from their own residence, i.e. from the places at Mecca itself. They do not have to get out of Mecca to assume ihram from here. However, when it comes to Umrah, they have to get out of Mecca to the nearest precinct wherefrom they can assume ihram.
So we have a next situation regarding concerning those who live beyond the Miqat or beyond the Miqat station. Then you have those people who live within the Miqat region, within that area. Then the thing concerning, for example, that the people, you have people like who live in Mecca. So for those people who live or residents of Mecca, regarding concerning Al-Hajj, then for them, their Miqat station is from their homes. So the person performing Hajj, like the days of Hajj concerning the 7th when Hajj start, then they will just assume Hajj from their homes. So then you have those who live outside, but they're still within the Miqat. For example, the people who mentioned Jeddah or Jeddah. So the people of Jeddah, that it is outside Mecca, but they're still within the Miqat. So for those people that also for Hajj, they assume Hajj from their residence. As for Umrah, like the people for Hajj, the people for Umrah, for those who live in Mecca, then they have to go to Al-Hil, which is concerned like that the outskirts, and then they come back in. That's for Umrah for the people of live within Mecca. So as for the people like who live in Jeddah, because they are outside of the hill, then they just do it also from there, from their homes, and they just enter. So that's concerning those who live within the Miqat stations. Then that's concerning how they assume ihram. Also, for example, people who might, for example, a person from England or from the West have gone for Hajj, and they perform. They are in Mecca waiting. Then they perform the ihram. They assume ihram from Mecca. So the person have gone and they're there. For example, they have gone. They're performing tamattu. They have gone, perform Umrah, and they have a couple of days, a week or so still remain before Hajj actually start. And they're just still in Mecca waiting. That person, then they'll perform when Hajj starts. They'll just put on the ihram, and they go into ihram from their hotels. They don't need to leave Mecca and go outside. They just assume ihram from within Mecca, as they are now counted of Ahli Mecca. They are now counted as the people of Mecca, even though they are originally not residents of Mecca. Aywa.
As for those who do not pass any of the aforesaid sites of ihram on the way to perform Hajj, they have to assume ihram once they know they are at the nearest place opposite to any of these sites. Al-Bukhari related that Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu said to the people of Iraq, "Make your site for ihram a place situated opposite to it, i.e. opposite to Qunal Manazil, the place of ihram for the people of Najd, on your usual way." Similarly, those who travel by plane should assume ihram once they know that they are parallel to any of the sites of ihram during the flight. However, they should be prepared before getting on board the plane by ritual bathing and cleaning. Afterwards, whenever the plane reaches a place that is parallel to any of the aforesaid sites of ihram, they should declare their intention of ihram and chant talbiyah in the plane. It is impermissible for one to delay ihram until the plane lands in the airport of Jeddah, as some pilgrims mistakenly do, as both Jeddah and Bahrain are not sites for ihram except for their own people or anyone who intends to perform Hajj or Umrah while being there. Otherwise, it is impermissible to assume ihram from Jeddah, as it will be regarded as negligence of one of the rites of Hajj, namely assuming ihram for one of its decreed sites, and one in this case will be obligated to slaughter a sacrificial animal in expiation.
So the author, Hafidullah, have concerned and discussed concerning that mentioned regarding concerning Rakib al-Ta'ira, regarding concerning those who use of plane, because this now is used a lot by many today. So a common way of traveling and going for Hajj and for Umrah is by way use of airplanes. So discuss, give some guidelines regarding that matter, give some points, some reminder regarding those things, that it's better for the person to prepare themselves before entering the plane, regarding that they have taken their bath, if they need to cut their nails and other things, that they need to prepare themselves to do those things before entering the plane, and then also they just wait until they reach close to the Miqat, then they'll go into the state of ihram. So that's the thing that he mentioned. And also the second thing that he highlighted and mentioned is regarding that the person not to assume that Jeddah, as that like of an international airport, most planes who go for Umrah and for Hajj, they will land in Jeddah, and that's the main, like Mecca doesn't have its own airport. So Mecca doesn't have its own airport, so the closest airport is that of Jeddah. So, but for the people, to clarify that, Jeddah is within the Miqat. So Jeddah is within the Miqat. The person not to wait until they land in Jeddah for them to assume ihram, that will be considered to be a form of negligence on their part if they knew this. So the general thing is that the person has to be mindful regarding these particular points regarding ihram.
So for instance, I don't have any family in Saudi. So the only reason why I would be going to Saudi from here would either be work, Hajj or Umrah. So for instance, if I was going for Hajj or Umrah, I'll just make my intention from here. So I'd have to assume ihram at one of those miqats. But say for instance, you're someone who's got family in Saudi, in Jeddah, so you fly to Jeddah and you're there anyway, and you assume ihram from Jeddah.
You're there, your original intention was to visit, and you're there staying. Says while you're there, you decide to go. Hey, then the person that you can assume though the miqat of Ahli Jeddah.
Just Ahli Jeddah and khalas.
Yeah. But the person, for example, he leave England, and his intention from the start was to go. He's going for Umrah.
That's it, khalas.
And then, but he wants to go to Jeddah, and then you understand, so he's thinking that before I go straight for Umrah, I'm going to stop in Jeddah, do some run around for 2 days. Then no, because the intention is Umrah. You understand? The intention is Umrah. Aywa.
Here is a common mistake made by many people and has to be pointed out. Some people mistakenly believe that they have to take a ritual bath before assuming ihram, arguing that this is not possible while being in a plane and so on. Therefore, it is important to point out that ihram means declaring the intention to perform the rites of Hajj or Umrah, avoiding the acts prohibited to be done while in a state of ihram as much as possible. As for washing, wearing perfumes, and the like, there are acts of the sunnah which a Muslim can do before getting on the plane, and assuming ihram without observing them is permissible.
So the Shaykh mentioned regarding concern that the matter regarding concerning preparation for ihram, that regarding concern the state of ihram is the person having the intention, and also observance of certain things. So ihram, there are certain things that is preferred to be done before, and then certain thing that has to be done is the person making those distinctions. So for example, al-ghusl, taking off the bath before, it is something which is mashru', it is something which is allowed. But it's not, as we discussed, that it's not wajib. If the person was to miss it, then he hasn't done anything which is violating his ihram. So the ihram, the person says, put on the garment, and then observe those but also it starts with the person having the intention and also at-talbiyah, as we'll discuss. So the Shaykh will clarify certain things where the person might emphasize those matters that is not overemphasize things that are secondary things, and neglect things that are the compulsory things. Aywa.
So, a plane passenger can make the intention to assume ihram and recite tarbiyah while being in her seat once the plane is over any of the known sites for ihram or just before it.
So instead of the thing of being over, if you mean like over right above, then that could be an error. Because the speed of the plane, I would say that no, for that makan, the distance is very short, especially in a plane, becomes like seconds. So it's preferable for the person to actually do it right before. So this is the point, the Miqat point there. So the person over there, boom, it's very quick regarding a plane traveling. So it may be ideal, better, that the person observe it right before he enters over. Because of the time span regarding of the Miqat is very short. It's very short. And in a plane, he'll most likely by the time he's told, he's already over it. He's already over it. Aywa.
This is known by asking the pilots or the hostesses of the plane or trying to find out independently through investigation and estimation. Thus, one should have done one's utmost in this regard. However, if one does not care, it will be considered an inexcusable negligence and indifference regarding one of the prerequisites of Hajj and Umrah, namely ihram, which may invalidate them. As for those who pass by their site of ihram without assuming it, they have to return to that site and assume ihram, for it is a manageable obligation that should never be neglected. So, if one does not go back and assume ihram from the right site, as some mistakenly do from Jeddah and the like, one in this case will be obligated to slaughter a sacrificial animal in expiation, i.e. to slaughter a sheep, or to get 1/7 of a camel or 1/7 of a cow and divide it amongst the residents of the sanctuary of Mecca, provided the pilgrim who sacrifices should eat nothing from it.
So that's concerning those cases regarding concerning that the consequence or the ruling Ashari regarding concerning a person who crosses the Miqat without in a state of ihram. So either the person the option that there are two, that either the person return back and assume ihram, and then so returning back and assume ihram and do that which is right. Then or the second option is that for the person, if he still insists to cross and to continue on with his journey, then the person has to offer a sacrifice. The person have to offer a sacrifice, as mentioned here. Aywa.
In a nutshell, Muslims should take an interest in their religious matters so as to perform all acts of worship properly and perfectly as legally enjoined. Amongst these religious matters is the ihram for Hajj and Umrah. It has to be assumed from the sites for ihram specified by the Prophet ﷺ. Therefore, a Muslim should be aware of these sites and never pass them without being in a state of ihram.
So that's concerning that matter regarding assuming ihram. So that's concerning of those ahkam regarding al-ihram, regarding those specific sites or places and where they are located and what to be done while there. Aywa. We go to the next chapter. So inshallah, we go to the chapter that follows next. That he mentioned babun fi kayfiyat al-ihram. Bab fi kayfiyat al-ihram.
I don't quite understand the question that the person is asking, but we may do. Basically, the person asked about the stations that were spoken about. Are they related to when Yaqub asked the brothers of Yusuf to go into Egypt through different gates?
No, it's separate.
Okay.
Yeah, that's separate. That's concerning entering Egypt. We're talking about entering Mecca.
So I said that.
Right, so concerning that, so those matters, so there's Miqat that are discussing regarding the person who's performing Hajj or Umrah before entering Mecca, then there are certain places the person have to assume ihram. That's concerning, this is regarding Mecca, not per se Egypt. Aywa.
If the person, they know now they entered the state, I mean they haven't entered the state of Ihram, they have to go back and
Yeah.
They have to go back or
No, so you have two choices.
they can decide to continue.
So the first, some said that the person will have cross over the Miqat and point, and not in a state of ihram. So either person go back and do the ihram at the right point because they had crossed over. That's one option. So if, for example, you have crossed, then you just go back on yourself at the Miqat and assume ihram from its proper place. Because if you cross over, you're already in the Miqat, you have now crossed the Miqat. And it's not the place to put on ihram after crossing, it's before. So either person go back and assume ihram at its right place, or if the person still insists, for example, he's unable to go back, whatever the reason may be, that he's unable to return back, but then he assume ihram at whatever place that he's at, and then that person will now have to sacrifice an animal as a compensation, as I mentioned, a fidya, for crossing the Miqat without being in the state of ihram. So those are the two choices. Either return, or if you're unable to return, then the person would offer a sacrifice. So you assume ihram at wherever point he's at, and then, but you know that he has to offer a sacrifice. Clear?
So yeah, just to clarify, so there's indifference between then going back or continuing.
Is there indifference?
What I'm trying to say is, if they go back, if they are able to go back, should they go back? Like, is it preferable to go back? Or
Preferable, as I said, it all depends on a person's situation and circumstance. But a person has one of those two choices. If he goes back, it means that he doesn't have to sacrifice an animal. You understand? So he doesn't have to sacrifice. But if he continue on, then it means that he has to sacrifice something. Preferable if the person is able to go back. You understand? That would be a preferred thing. But I've said that, as I said, there may be circumstance where the person is unable. You understand? So the person just have got to continue, but with that, it comes with, they have to offer a sacrifice. Aywa.
In relation to that question, so if you, obviously we mentioned the point, the 5 different points of Miqat. If the person is coming from a particular direction and entered into the Miqat, or from the direction that he's meant to, can he go to another Miqat and enter from that one?
Yeah, he can do so.
He can do that.
Hey,
So he
them
can
some-
enter from any other, he enters, he forgot to enter into Ihram from his Miqat. Then when he was inside, he said, okay, let me go to this Miqat because it's easier to go back to that one.
Hey, would
than
they?
my one. Then you can.
Hey, whichever him said, the main person from which the Miqat that is, you understand, he's able to enter from or to use, make use of.
Because the reason why I asked that because where it was specifically mentioned in Ahl al-Yemen come from
That's a general rule. That's a general rule. You understand? That's a general rule regarding concerning it. No? That most, that's it, as a general rule regarding that. These are the points that are there that a person has to use one of them. You understand? So a person from Yemen, but he wants to go around, then that's his choice. You understand? But generally concerns that general rule that these are cover the 5 main directions. You understand? But the person in entering, wherever he's, you understand, he must come. As I said, for example, like a plane. You understand that a plane can use any, depending on the plane route. You understand? So it could, that one is there, but he chooses to go another direction, then that's it, you understand? But he used the one that he has to cross. That the plane will cross, or whichever one is accessible for him.
I think that's going to be a madness though. If he misses the Yemeni one, he's going to end up near Iraq. And if he forgets to go back to that, he might go back to that one. He might visit all the
Hey, so that becomes, so?
Ready?
Aywa.
بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله قال المؤلف حفظه الله chapter 5 page number 421 how to assume ihram. Ihram, a state of ritual purity during Hajj and Umrah, is the first of the rites of Hajj, and it means the intention to start the rites. It is called ihram, which derived from the Arabic word haram, forbidden or prohibited, because a pilgrim, by assuming ihram, prohibits himself from all acts that have been permissible before being in this state, such as sexual intercourse, wearing perfume, clipping one's fingernails, having one's hair cut, or wearing certain kinds of clothes.
So those are things regarding concern that he mentioned regarding concern ihram, what is meant by ihram. That ihram actually concern the main bit of ihram concerning huwa an-niyatul dukhul fi nusuk. So ihram is the person having the intention, but there's other things that are attached to it. that goes along with ihram. So the person that assumes a certain state where it would include wearing a certain type of garment, not doing certain things. So the person now with ihram, that there's things that would be ordinarily halal, mubah. Now some of those things, you have certain restriction where he's now restricted regarding what he can and cannot do. That's concerning ihram. So the person has certain restrictions regarding what he's able to do and what he's not able to do. Some of those things that he mentioned here regarding of the, they say mahdurat, those things that are forbidden while the person in the state of ihram, those things will be discussed separately. He just give an example of some of those things that a person has to avoid while in the state of ihram. So I have the two things regarding the state of ihram. A person just wearing ihram garment. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's a state of ihram. Clear? So a person might be wearing the garment. He leaves his house from London. He leaves his house from wherever, from Birmingham, from Washington, and he's wearing the garment of ihram. That doesn't mean that he's in a state of ihram. He's just wearing the garment. So there's a few things that will be in place for the person to be considered to be in a state of ihram is when he makes the intention. When he makes the intention with other things that are added to it. Aywa.
Obviously, niyyah is something that is there, it's inside someone. And it's obviously mentioned on the tongue in this case, obviously. That's easily missed. That can be easily missed, though.
That's just like with salah. You understand? So even though it's some, but that's the other part of the rule that it has to be done. That's what I'm saying, the person doing certain things has to be conscious of what he's doing. You understand? So even though, yes, but in that state, the person will be conscious regarding concerning that. If his intention is for this ibadah, that he has to somewhat be conscious at a certain point that his intention have to be, certain things have to be done. And you'll find that's not concerning because Hajj, Umrah takes time that a person has to be, when he's in that state, be conscious of what he can and cannot do. That the thing has to be conscious of what he can and cannot do when he assume that state of ihram. But yes, it starts with the intention and then other things are added to it. You have to just be conscious because a person can make an intention from New York or from London. You understand? For ihram. But it may be something, you understand? So he can assume it right now. But it wouldn't be, you understand? But it would be, why put yourself in that situation? So something as just being conscious, that was said is a few things to be put in place of those things, the intention, but then he put restriction on the person, type of thing. The person might do it now, but it'd be abath. You're just mucking around. Okay, you know, you don't have the visa, you don't have the ticket, you have nothing prepared. You understand? So the person is mucking around, and you understand? So the Muslim shouldn't function like that. The Muslim wouldn't approach things in that manner. Aywa.
To illustrate, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, may Allah have mercy on him, said, a man is not considered in a state of ihram once he intends with his heart to perform Hajj, for the intention is already in his heart since he have left his hometown heading for Mecca. So there must be specific words or deeds through which he becomes in a state of ihram. Before assuming ihram, it is desirable to get prepared for such a state by some deeds prior to this great act of worship.
Okay, so before concerning ihram, there's certain things the person tries to prepare himself and to carry out before he goes into fully in the state of ihram. So a part of that preparation as follows. Aywa.
Here, obviously, the cases he mentioned, it has to be mentioned by speech. Obviously, Hajj is like a pillar, like one of the pillars
Of Islam.
But Salah, you don't have to mention it. And
Aywa.
you're saying it's in the heart for Hajj. What's the proof to say that you have to say something?
Yeah, that will come, inshallah ta'ala. So all those things I've said, he just mentioned certain things, guide in general. But with concerning that how the things are laid out, then those things regarding the arkan of Hajj and Umrah, those things will come later.
First, it is desirable to have a bath, washing the whole body before ihram, for the Prophet ﷺ used to do so before assuming ihram. This is also because bathing is a better and more comprehensive way of cleaning, and ridding oneself of any undesirable smells. Moreover, having a bath upon assuming ihram is also required for a woman in a state of postnatal bleeding or menstruation.
So regarding concerning that ihram, that as mentioned, that is something of the thing which is mentioned here, that is something which is mustahab to be done. So regarding that is something which is recommended to be done regarding concerning the person before as preparing themselves for ihram, that they take a full wash or take a wash regarding concerning a ghusl, as ordinary the person perform a ghusl. And that applicable regarding concerning that he mentioned a hadith regarding the Prophet Islam, but At-Timithi rahimahullah mentioned hadith Hasan al-Gharib, that indicates some type of weakness in the hadith. So upon the Prophet Islam that he mentioned, and also they mentioned that ulama, they have somewhat At-Timithi that they hold to be something which is mustahab. That's the ulama, which is most of the ulama or بعض ulama mentioned that قد بعض أهل العلم الاغتسال عند ihram, عند الإحرام. So majority, some of the ulama were of that view, that this to be done. So that applies to male and female. So this rule applies to male and female, and even added, even the woman is in her menstrual cycle and her intention, then she should, then also is advised, but also she does this, and even concerning even a child. So if the child going for Umrah or for Hajj, also is advisable also for them to perform ghusl. Aywa.
For the Prophet ﷺ commanded Asma bint Umays, who was in a state of confinement, to take a bath before assuming ihram, as related by Imam Muslim. He ﷺ also commanded Aisha radiallahu anha, his wife, to do the same, though she was in her menstrual period. The purpose of this is to clean the body, remove undesired smells, and remove the impurity of menstruation or confinement.
Anyways, that's concerned the first of those things regarding of those acts or those things to be carried out as a form of preparation for ihram, that a person take a bath. And as mentioned, something which is mustahab. As mentioned, the ulama mentions وَهَذَا الْغُسُلْ لَيْسَ بِوَاجِب, that this performing this type of ghusl for ihram is not something which is wajib. وَهَذَا مُجْمَعَ عَلَيْهِ, and it's something which is agreed upon بَيْنَ عَامَةُ الْعُلَمَاء, between the ulama in general, majority of the ulama, that they mention it is something which is not wajib at all to be done. So if the person was to not do it, then they're just not doing, then their ihram is still valid. Their ihram is still valid if they were to miss not performing al-ghusl. Aywa.
Second, before assuming ihram, it is desirable to clean oneself perfectly well, removing the hair which is legally enjoined to be removed, such as trimming the moustache, shaving the hair of the armpits, and shaving the pubic hair. One should do this before assuming ihram, because it will not be allowed when being in a state of ihram. Yet, removing such kinds of hair is not one of the prerequisites for ihram. In other words, if one does not trim or shave any of them, one is not obligated to do so. It is permissible to do so if needed.
Yes, so the second of those things, the person from the preparation regarding a tanzif, in line with concerning tanzif, concerning cleanliness. Also, the person remove concerning that, these doing of these things that are mentioned. So if the person is to trim or remove concerning hair from the armpit, the pubic area, also cut up the person's nail, the mustache, and the likes, these things now can be done as a form of the person preparation for ihram. And what is mentioned here applies to male and also applies to female. So what applies to male also applies to female regarding these preparations. Aywa.
Third, it is desirable for a pilgrim to perfume oneself using whatever is available, such as musk, incense, rose water, aloes, or the like. For Aisha radiallahu anha reported, I used to send Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam whenever he wanted to assume ihram, and also on finishing ihram before circumambulating the house of Allah, i.e. before tawaf. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, may Allah have mercy on him, said, if a pilgrim wants to wear some perfume before assuming ihram, it will be fine. Yet doing so is not obligatory, for the Prophet ﷺ did so, but he did not enjoin the people to do the same.
Yes, it'll show that the second act, or this third of those acts is regarding that a person wearing something of fragrance. So that to put on the person's body, not onto, try to get it onto his ihram garment. So the person put on his body, wearing of the perfume, and this particular act is more so for male. This is more so regarding concerning for men without women doing of this. Aywa.
Fourth, it is desirable for male pilgrims before ihram to take off all tailor or sewn clothes and wear something unstitched. The Prophet ﷺ used to take off his tailored or sewn clothes and wear something unstitched after taking a bath to assume ihram. So a pilgrim should wear a white, clean, unstitched loincloth wrapped around the lower part of the body, wrapping another sheet of white, clean, unstitched cloth around the upper part. Yet it is permissible to replace the white colour with any other colour provided it is traditionally befitting men.
Yes, that's concerned. So the next thing, the Rabi, of those things regarding that for male, for them concerned with ihram, that they have to remove all their normal clothing. So their normal clothing that is fitted to the body normally, then those things will be removed, and I will remove all of his clothing. Concerned that's not concerned those inner or the outer ones. Concerned that so all of his inner clothing and outer clothing, all those are to be removed as a part of his preparation, and that here we are concerned said izar wal rida. So something to cover the lower half and the top half, to the top of the body, the top of the body, and the bottom of the body, that to cover the male. As mentioned, it is preferred that the person wear. As for the color, it should be white. That's preferable. It has to be white. So the person might have grey, could be brown. And as the Shaykh mentions, nothing that the person says, nothing that is resembles that is not reflective of the person's manhood. So pink is not something that a man would, you understand, would be a color that he said, no, it would be like of a manly type of color. So, but a general color that is worn would be white or something close to white. Those are the traditional colors that are normally worn. As for that's concerning those matters, and also should be clean. Also, those ihram garments, they can be changed. So the person might start, for example, Hajj, first day, second day, he's wearing one set, then the next day he took it off and get a new one and wear it, then that's not a problem. So that means the person, if you start with it, you have to end with it. So it could be even washed, but not washed in anything which has fragrance in it. So it can be changed, it can be washed, but the person has to bear in mind certain things.
My question is what's he wearing when he's washing his ihram?
Then the person might have a neck set. He may have a neck set, so you have like a...
He has to put on another ihram.
Yes, I will still wear another ihram. Or, so have it on, or it would be like a far-fetched situation that a person constantly has one, wash it in, but like in area where there's a confined area, wash it and then put it out to dry and then put it back on. But that's, I said, far-fetched. You understand? Those are like far-fetched situation. But a person might have one, you understand? You have two set, one dirty, you want to wash it and put another one and put that on for drink, you understand? Have that one ready if anything may to occur. Then the main thing that it can be washed. For the reason maybe it can be washed and then still be used again. That's concerning Aywa.
The idea behind this is to withdraw oneself from luxury and to have the feeling of a submissive servant of Allah through wearing such humble clothing. Moreover, such clothing always reminds one of being in a state of ihram, and thus one keeps alert and avoids committing the acts prohibited during ihram.
So that's also the hikmah behind concerning wearing of those garments. The person become conscious that that's in a state of ihram. So it becomes a reminder to the person that is in this state. So and that he has to observe certain rules. Then after wearing of this ihram garment, that of the benefit is as a reminder for the person, and also you put everyone regarding ihram garment. You put everyone on an equal par. So you find that everyone wearing something very similar. The cost, the price, that garment concerning that the price, the cost price may be different from one person to another, but it's general. Everyone is wearing something on even par regarding you have to wear something which is similar, which is a two-piece garment for male. This is for male and also for any male, whether that is an adult or a child. Whether adult or child, so all male have to observe wear these two garments. As for female, then they wear their ordinary clothing. So female wear their ordinary clothing, except for certain exceptions to be discussed where they don't do, which is they don't wear things that cover off their face directly or wear of glove. That will be discussed later, but their ordinary clothing, general clothing, those things are still worn.
The clothing of ihram reminds one of death, the shroud of dead people, and the day of resurrection, and so on and so forth. In addition, taking off sewn clothes before intending to assume ihram is an act of the sunnah, but it is obligatory for assuming ihram. So if a pilgrim intends assuming ihram while still wearing his ordinary sewn clothes, his ihram is considered valid, but he is then obligated to take off such clothes and put on the clothes of ihram.
So that's concerning that, so clothes that are fitted to the body, that fitted to the body side. For example, this cloth on the table, this tablecloth. Now, so it is, because I mentioned things not sewn, right? So meaning concern, for example, if you were to observe, that have stitches here on the end. It's stitched, isn't it? Now, so this can be worn, even with these stitches here. Because this garment is not made to fit to the body, in the sense of it is made like how this is fitted to the body, cut, then that's what is intended. So this, as it is, can be worn, even though it has some stitches on it. Because it's not made to fit to the body. Now, so it could be worn. Just an example, case I remember that we fell into, where me and next brother were traveling. We didn't have an ihram garment, and we were traveling Sunnah Mashiach. So we were, you understand, time to leave, and we didn't have an ihram garment. So, but we were staying there like sheets, bed sheets. Or when we reached the airport, we got some of the, the sheets that they use in a plane for cover with. Yeah. We just used those were used as our ihram. Yeah. So even though in a sense, so those were used as our ihram. So it says so those things can be used, but you understand. So the main thing was that the shahid that these type of things can be used, even though they might have a little stitches. So what's actually meant by things that are stitched, or it is fitted to the body, stitched and fit to the body size, then that is what is not to be worn by men. Aywa.
By fulfilling the aforesaid prerequisites, a pilgrim is thus prepared to be in a state of ihram. But such acts themselves are not called ihram, as many people mistakenly believe. Ihram means the intention of starting performing the rites of Hajj or Umrah. Accordingly, a pilgrim is not considered in a state of ihram once he takes off his sewn clothes and wears the aforementioned clothing of ihram without having the intention of starting performing the rites of Hajj or Umrah. This is because the Prophet ﷺ said, "Indeed, the correctness and reward of deeds depend upon intentions." As for praying before assuming ihram, the more valid opinion is that there is not a special kind of prayer to be offered before ihram. However, if the time of ihram coincides with an obligatory prayer, then a pilgrim is to perform the obligatory prayer first, then assume ihram. To illustrate, it was narrated that the Prophet ﷺ assumed ihram immediately following performing an obligatory prayer. Moreover, Anas reported that the Prophet ﷺ performed the Dhuhr prayer, then rode his mount beast, and when he came to the hill of Al-Bayda, he raised his voice with tarbiyah. The great Muslim scholar Ibn Qayyim, may Allah have mercy on him, said, "It was never reported that the Prophet ﷺ specified performing 2 rak'ah, units of prayer, for assuming ihram."
Anyway, so that's concerned the author, rahimahullah. That's after those masail that is mentioned, as a by way of caution, that it is preferred concerned that mentioned regarding amma salat qabla ihram, فيسأل أنه ليس لإحرام صلاة تخص. That he mentioned regarding concern with ihram, there's no like salat specific for ihram. That a person so there's no salat that is specific for the person to go to for ihram. So normally that a person either that it is preferred that a person he would pray a compulsory salat then go into ihram, or some even including concerning zawat al-asbab salat that as a reason, but generally because it's preferred for the person to pray then go into ihram after praying. But there's no specific salat regarding ihram. There's no specific salat that the person has to perform regarding ihram, as mentioned by Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah in his book Zad al-Ma'ad. Zad Ma'ad. A question regarding this book Zad al-Ma'ad by Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah. Know of that book? It's a book that's said to be on seerah. That he wrote while he's in travel. But that book, they have a discussion. Is a book they said of those books as of on seerah, but in a manner where it is fiqh seerah. So you find a style of seerah that will mention events as they occur. That you find us in the books that sometimes that Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah that he wrote this book, for instance, a fiqh of seerah, where it's a book in seerah, but when he discusses about salat, he'll go in detail about salah and all the ahkam of salat, with hajj, all the ahkam of hajj. So seerah book does not normally follow that pattern, that style. They mention concerning that hajj, salat was made for compulsory this time, but they won't go into detail of the description of salah and it's all this ahkam. He's just giving you the events as they occur. That's seerah. But with Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, that he'll go in detail in clarifying these matters. So even though it's a book in seerah, but the matters concerning act of ibadat, he'll go in detail in clarifying them from start to end. So if you go in the book of Zad al-Ma'ad, which is a book in seerah, you see Sifatul Salat from start to end. Everything to be done. So for example, some people in their library, where do you put this book? In the section of seerah or in the section of fiqh? So it varies. Some see it as seerah and some put it in. So some of the Shaykh put it in the topic concerning that. Really it's a book in fiqh. But some mention a book, fiqh seerah, so they put it in seerah. So it varies. It varies. Aywa.
What was reported is that he performed the obligatory Dhuhr prayer before it. It is important here to draw the attention of pilgrims to a very important matter. Many pilgrims mistakenly believe that they have to assume ihram from the mosque in the site for ihram for them. As a result, many pilgrims, males and females, hurry to such mosques, overcrowding them to start assuming ihram from there. They may also change their clothes there and wear the clothing of ihram, while in fact all such issues are by all means baseless. Rather, Muslims are just required to assume ihram from the proper site for ihram for them, not specifically from the mosques therein. They can assume ihram anywhere in such sites, and there is no specific place in a certain site from which a pilgrim is obligated to assume ihram. It is to say, pilgrims can assume ihram wherever is appropriate for them in their site for ihram, and this makes it easier for them and their fellows. This also spares pilgrims being exposed before one another and being jammed in certain places. We would like to point out that those mosques in the sites for ihram were not there during the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, and that they were not built for the purpose of assuming ihram. However, they were built for the inhabitants of and around such places to perform prayer therein. This is very important to bear in mind, and may Allah grant us all success.
Yes, the author, Hafidullah, discussed concerning of those things a way of some tanbihat, some that's things of caution regarding that may occur out of ignorance or whatever those reasons may be that may be done by some of the Muslims regarding ihram. So assuming having some type of assumptions about things. And with those assumptions sometimes making things difficult upon themselves and others. Some of those assumptions regarding that believing that the person have to go in a state of ihram while you're in a masjid. So in most of those locations you might have a masjid where you find that there's a local community that live there. But the person believing that he must assume ihram while inside the masjid. Some believe that they have to go to where the mihrab is in the masjid and do and do their thing there. So there's things. So that's, for example, this is a location. This is the site, a location for or the the site for ihram or for the miqat, the person can do anywhere. The person in the masjid, outside the masjid, is not a condition where you have to be in the masjid. Naam, as we discussed so, but sometimes because of misconceptions, people make it difficult upon themselves. So the Shaykh wishes to clarify those masajid that are there, that their main intent is that they are built there for the local community to use the masjid. But also it is used by those who go by there performing Umrah or Hajj as a miqat. So he wishes to clarify those matters. And also he clarified, which made clear, that even at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that in those places there was no masjid that was built there. So the masjid is not the main thing, is the location. Not the masjid is the location. Aywa.
A pilgrim is free to choose either the three kinds of ihram, namely tamattu, ifrad, and qiran.
So regarding concerning that, goes to the next topic, which is regarding concerning that ansakh, which is concerning Hajj, that there's three types that he mentioned here. Some of the ulama, they mentioned there's a fourth. So they mentioned that there's a fourth. So they mentioned three: tamattu, qiran, and ifrad. So you have those three types that are common ones, but they mentioned there, some mention that there's a fourth, which is an-nusuk al-mutlaq. Itlaq, with a person, he has no intention for a specific type of Hajj. He has no intention for no specific type of Hajj that may come later for him. So when he starts, he's undecided. But later on, he may make a decision, but he started out as undecided. So they mentioned that as being a fourth type. But what is more common with most is that, and what's the common, that there's three types. So the person in the long run, he will fall into one of these three in the long run. So those are three types. They mentioned tamattu, qiran, or qarin, and also ifrad. And you'll mention the difference between all these three. Aywa.
Tamattu, it means that a pilgrim assumes ihram.
Before, sir, just to add something regarding ihram, that is it to be done before he prays, after he prays, when he goes on to his back to his car and ready to move, then ihram can be done, and those things, it varies. So ihram can be done. The more preferred thing I will discuss concerning ihram, concerning that when the person is about to move off from his mode of transport. He's going to make his at-Talbiyah from there, and everything actually don't start from there. Now, we discussed that at that particular point. But back to the discussion regarding concerning that these are the three types of Hajj that can be performed. So the person performing Hajj, that he has to make sure that his Hajj is one of these three. One of these three types that are mentioned. For Umrah, there's no choices concerning Umrah. There's only one type of Umrah. There's only one way to perform Umrah. As for Hajj, that there's three ways. So the person has to choose one of these three ways that would be mentioned. Aywa.
Tamattu, it means that a pilgrim assumes ihram for performing Umrah during the months of Hajj, and then after performing Umrah, a pilgrim assumes ihram for performing Hajj in the same season.
So regarding concerning, I mentioned tamattu, that tamattu is the person performing Hajj and Umrah together. In the sense of Umrah will be performed first, and regarding concerning that the months of Al-Hajj, meaning concerning more so regarding that the person can start from now, because we're in the month of what? Shawwal, and next are we in Dhu Qiyada. So the person, for example, in Dhu Qiyada, which is still a month away, perform Umrah, and then he waits for Hajj, and then go for that, and then he goes into Hajj. So it is Umrah done separately, and then Hajj done separately. So you perform Umrah, come out of the state of Ihram, of Umrah, end this Umrah, then he waits until Hajj starts, and then he perform Hajj. So in one trip, he's performing Umrah separately and Hajj separately, but both are added and they call tamattu. Clear? Aywa.
Ifrad, it means that a pilgrim assumes ihram for performing Hajj only, keeping in the state of ihram until he finishes performing the rites of Hajj.
So with ifrad, as mentioned, fard, is only performing Hajj, no Umrah attached to it. So the person's intention He's just carrying out the acts of Hajj. So when Hajj starts on that day, he starts. And when it ends. There's no Umrah that goes along with it. Some of the ulama, some mention that Umrah is done after, but with Ifrad is the person intending to perform Hajj only. Aywa.
Qiran, it means that a pilgrim assumes ihram for performing both Umrah and Hajj together, or to assume ihram for Umrah, then before the starting of Tawaf, circling the Kaaba for Umrah, a pilgrim intends performing both Umrah and Hajj either from the Miqat or before the Tawaf of Umrah. In this case, a pilgrim is to perform both Tawaf and say, going between Safa and Marwa for both. It is important to point out that a pilgrim who intends Tamattu or Qiran is obligated to slaughter a sacrificial animal if he is not a resident of Mecca. We should also know that the best of the aforesaid 3 ways of Ihram is Tamattu, for various legal proofs.
Aywa. So the author, Hafidullah, they mention regarding concerning difference, they mention Al-Qiran, which is the third, regarding that, Al-Qiran, that the person will perform Umrah and Hajj in one trip. So the person regarding Qiran, so the person performing Umrah and then Hajj, but in this case, that both are done, they are combined together without a break. So with Tamattu, there's a break. Umrah, then you come out to the state of Umrah, and you go back to normalcy, right? Then when Hajj starts, then you perform Hajj. That's Tamattu. So with Tamattu, there's a break. You perform Umrah, end Umrah completely, then you wait, and then you start Hajj separately. Then with Qiran or Qarin, then a person is Umrah, goes straight into Hajj. There's no break. So he starts Umrah, doesn't come out of Umrah. He doesn't, when Umrah ends, or so the last act of Umrah would not be carried out, which is, wouldn't come out of Ihram, but wait, and then when the Hajj starts, he goes straight into Hajj. So there's no break in between regarding Qiran. Both Tamattu and Qiran require the person also that he has to perform a form of sacrifice. With Ifrad, there's no sacrifice. So with Ifrad, there's no sacrifice that is to be done, but with Tamattu and also Qiran, that the person will perform some form of sacrifice, or the person doesn't, then the person would, as we mentioned, to be mentioned, he will do siyam. He do some form of compensation, which would be if he cannot afford sacrifice, then he fasts. Aywa. Then the Shaykh mentioned regarding Afdal, which is a discussion between the ulama regarding which of those 3 are said to be the best. And he goes back to, and I mentioned that, some was which one did I mention concerning, you have a khilaf between the ulama. So you have a discussion between the ulama regarding which of those 3 are said to be the better, the more advisable, the preferred to be done. That of the ulama concerning Tamattu, that is something which is wajib. That Tamattu, they mention it wujub. That Tamattu regarding concerning that Tamattu for a person who didn't carry his travel with his sacrificial animal, then Tamattu for him is preferred. So you have a look at discussion between the ulama regarding that, but those who incline towards Tamattu, of those who are more inclined towards being Tamattu being the more preferred of those ones, you have Abdullah ibn Abbas. So you have Abdullah ibn Abbas, we have Ishaq ibn Rahuya, we have Ibn Hazm, that more inclined. They are one that mentioned that Tamattu is the preferred one to be done. But then you go back to the next discussion regarding concerning which one did the Prophet of Islam perform of those 3. Which of those types of Hajj did the Prophet of Islam perform? Qawl al-Raji' is that he performed Qarin. As he, the Prophet said that he took his animal with him from Medina and took his animal with him throughout his journey, that indicating that it was Qarin, and didn't break in between his perform Umrah, and then didn't break it with his Umrah, continue through until Hajj, indicating that he did Qiran or Qarin. Aywa.
Once a pilgrim assumes ihram in any of the aforesaid 3 ways, he is to chant tarbiyah, saying, "Here I am at your service, O Allah, here I am at your service. Here I am at your service, you have no partner. Here I am at your service. Verily all praise, blessings and dominion are yours, you have no partner." A pilgrim should raise his voice with tarbiyah, saying it repeatedly.
It's not concerning that talbiyah that is said throughout as often as possible. So that's concerning of those things that relates to matters regarding concerning of the matter regarding that concerning al-ihram, regarding of how to go in a state of preparation for ihram. That's concerning of those matters. So that inshallah ta'ala that will end here. So they mentioned regarding concerning that they also mentioned that man taraka ihram min al-miqat, the person who intentionally misses going into a state of ihram from the miqat station, whichever of those miqat station, muta'ammidan, intentionally, aliman bitahrimi, that is not forbidden, that he shouldn't do so, but he still did it, knowing that he's doing something that he shouldn't be doing. Intentionally. Then I mentioned that such a person, and he wasn't forced into that situation, that they mentioned فَيَجِبَ عَلَيْهِ الدَّمْ. That's the call of Jumhur of the ulama, that the person is to offer a sacrifice because he missed something, did something that he shouldn't have done, and he did this thing intentionally and with knowledge. So by this, you have done something which is wrong, and the expiation is that the person, with Jumhur of the ulama, that he has to offer a sacrifice, meaning offer a sheep or a goat in sacrifice for that error that he committed, or that wrong that he did, as he did it intentionally. So that inshallah ta'ala, that will end regarding concerning of those points that relates to ahkam al-hajj. And inshallah ta'ala, next week we'll continue with the next point regarding mahdurat al-ihram. Wa billahi ta'ala tawfiq wal akhir da'wa alhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum.